An ecosystem of predators. Cows don't eat humans, as far as we know. They eat plants and are eaten by predators. That's how ecosystems work. But what if we turned cows into predators, along with every herbivore species? Could a world of endless predation even function? How would we possibly simulate it? And what kind of terrors would it produce? Let's go down the list. First problem, energy. Flip a switch that turns all life into predators, and you'll very quickly have no more life. In nature, carnivores eat herbivores, which eat producers, which eat the sun, photosynthesis. But if we remove the producer plants that convert sunlight into chemical energy, we'll have no base to build our all-predator utopia upon. And it's not like there are predatory plants. Oh wait, there totally are. Fly traps, pitcher plants, sundews. Deprive our leafy friends of nitrogen and they'll get a craving for flesh. So let's say all photosynthetic plants in our alternate Earth moonlight in carnivory, and now we can have vegetation while technically staying all predators. Okay, but plants only transfer energy to animals when eaten, which leads us to issue 2, herbivores. Swap Earth's A+ prey over to the predator track, and not only would the biosphere collapse, but so too would said species grades, F-, in not starving. To illustrate, elephants are pretty tough. Throw an elephant in the ring with virtually any animal, and the one with the trunk is taking home the belt. But just because elephants can easily KO a testy buffalo doesn't mean they could run down predator style. An elephant's top speed is maybe half of a water buffalo's, a quarter of a gazelle's. If they want to pass Carnivore 101, something needs to change. This gets us to the core of our herbivore versus carnivore dilemma. What makes a good herbivore usually makes a terrible meat eater. Reversing things, though a deer could outrun a wolf, even if they had sharp teeth, actually subduing one is out of the question. A deer adapted for predation would need to look completely different. Likewise, our carnivorous elephant will require more than new dentures. They'd likely have to be lighter and faster, with body parts specifically adapted to neutralizing prey after catching up to them. There's a lot more to say about how insane animals in our all-predator ecosystem will look, but the more immediate issue is, again, if nobody's eating plants, there's no energy coming in, and the planet will be out of order in a week. Nature has a fix here, albeit a horrifying one. See, horses already hunger for flesh. Oh, they might prefer grass, but place a rodent or baby animal in front of them, and it's chow time. Deer will do the same, so will cows, giraffes, rabbits, hippos. The disturbing truth is in nature, categories aren't clean, and nobody likes passing up on free nutrients. But that goes both ways. Wolves will sometimes eat plants, same with bears. So all told, primary consumers in our predator world could still eat a sustainable quantity of plants while technically remaining facultative carnivores or omnivores. So to make this work, let's just tweak how nutrition functions in this reality so that any grazers also need to stay on the predator grind set. So that's herbivores fixed, but now predators have a problem. Because to be a predator of predators, a hunter in a reality where grass eaters are also honed for the hunt, would be a tricky job indeed. It's possible we'd see predators adopt defenses typically just for prey, physical barricades like spines or shells, active deterrents like horns and antlers, maybe even some chemical spray. It sounds outlandish, but you can see examples of this in nature. Compare, for instance, tigers and scorpions. Tigers are privileged, sleek and fast and unarmored because no one eats them and they eat everyone. Scorpions, meanwhile, are in the nightmare zone of the food web. They're carnivores that eat insects and mice twice their size, but are also prey themselves. Hence why scorpions must be armed from tip to tail in a way few predators are. And brief aside, ever notice how no predators have horns? You'd think some spiky bits would be helpful, but with the dubious exception of certain lizards, horns are only for the hunted. On hunters, they seemingly get in the way. But in a reality where that herd of bovines are just as likely to flip the script and eat you, investing in some defense might be a good call. We can get a better sense of what specific traits our predators of predators would favor through simulating natural selection. This program by MinuteLabs.io, inspired by those evolution videos from the channel Primer, essentially works by throwing a bunch of blobs into an environment with limited food, and with each generation, the blobs favor better and better traits. When a blob gets big enough, it can eat other blobs. So let's mess with the blob's stats to make them mostly carnivores and see what happens. Many generations later, what's notable is that while a lot of blobs stay big and bad, just like in nature, smaller builds, prioritizing keen senses and raw speed, manage to eke out their own niche. Goes to show that even in a world of predators, there be diversity. Agile pursuit predators, ambush predators, insectivores with sharp eyesight. You can see such variety in the world today. And it's worth re-emphasizing, we didn't tell the simulation to mimic natural patterns. It just did it through the blind force of selective pressures in the laws of energy efficiency. Not every predator can be at the top, which is indeed problem 4. Apex predators. Predators of predators of predators are essential keystones for ecosystem health. But what could be head predator in a world like this one? There's 2 possible answers, the first of which is its own massively insane rabbit hole, so let's start with the second. Simply put, even in hyper-competitive ecosystems, apex predators still tend to emerge. After millions of years of theropods jockeying for dominance, the old T-Rex enjoyed a lengthy, uncontested reign with almost no rivals. Time and sufficient pressure will forge monsters among monsters. Of course, trying to determine what specific species would go on to become apex hunters in our new timeline is pure conjecture, but that's kind of what we're here for. Give all species on Earth a fighting chance at predation, and you'd likely see some very unexpected candidates rise to the top of their ecosystems. While it might seem improbable for kangaroos to become colossal predators, or koalas to become ambush hunters, stranger candidates have become top carnivores before. Bringing it back to the dinos, the ancestor of the T-Rex and other theropods was a tiny chicken-sized omnivore, hardly the betting pool's favorite to becoming the largest hunter on land. Give predation to the masses, and monster predators could truly come from anywhere. We also need to remember that monster predators might not look like we expect. The deadliest predator on Earth today is arguably the dragonfly, with a 95 to 97% successful hunt rate. Lions, you wish. Likewise, one of the most lethal hunters in the ocean is the seahorse. Goofy from our perspective, but if you're a brine shrimp, the seahorse is basically the Grim Reaper. Strange as it might sound, there's no reason to think certain existing apex predators like the great horned owl would need to change their strategies if booted into predator world. They'd be like,
"Oh, rodents have fangs now? Puh, whatever." Hyper-effective hunters come in all shapes and sizes, which at last leads us back to the massive rabbit hole, humans. Would squishy Homo sapiens once again ascend to the apex of the food web in this alternate timeline? Or might a different species be taking the top spot? This is the biggest missing piece in determining the fate of Predator World, and an exceedingly tricky question to answer. Like, imagine you're a Stone Age tribesperson living at the end of the last glacial maximum. How do you like your chances in this world where anything, pure predator or no, sees you as a potential food source? To simulate this experience, I'll be playing Minecraft with its code modified so that all species try to eat me. I use the most advanced tech on this channel. Okay, crudeness aside, the experience of surviving in an ecosystem where there's absolutely zero safety in any species was surprisingly illuminating. Funny though it was to be pursued by a pack of carnivorous chickens, always being on the run meant all my plans for tools, shelter, and sustainable food were pushed out of my brain by the constant need to stay alive. Though hardly a controlled experiment, I found myself doing very little home building or weapon crafting because literally all I could think about was where to get my next meal and how to avoid becoming one. This, one can easily assume, would be the experience of primitive humans in Predator World, an experience that doesn't seem particularly conducive to building civilization. And indeed, a lot of the tools required for a civilization starter pack might be walled off entirely in this timeline. Most obviously, animal domestication, our first puzzle piece within the larger puzzle piece of human success. Penning and selectively breeding animals is a major key to a stable society. But let me tell you, it's a lot harder to establish a farm when that flock of sheep is moving on you like a wolf pack. A lot of familiar herbivores that made for great domesticated animals would suddenly become terrible candidates if they had a predation side job. And that's not just because they might eat us. Even if you can domesticate a carnivore, keeping one fed is a costly novelty. In the case of herbivores, humans can't eat grass, so feeding a regular cow is no big hassle for us. But hunting down a steady diet of meat for your penned carnivore? Pricey work in an early agrarian world. Consider that pandas are basically semi-carnivorous cows, same coloration, same refinement when it comes to eating, yet you don't see a lot of humans hitching tractors to them. And that's not just because pandas are lazy, it's also because they're still very much bears, solitary, unpredictable, territorial, with a powerful bite and the instinct to use it. Hardly an ideal partner to get into the agriculture business with. And in an all-predator timeline, there might not be partners, period. So, are humans cooked? Well, I'd hardly say we're out of the oven, but there are other factors to consider. Sure, trying to tame a carnivorous, pack-hunting horse is a horrifying prospect. Attempting to do so in Minecraft definitely made me appreciate how fast these monsters are. But horses are only horses because humans got their grubby domesticating hands on them. Early prehistoric equines were both smaller and not as singularly bred for speed. And while I don't relish the idea of getting attacked by, like, a pony, it sounds a fair bit more manageable. And humans have managed to strike bargains with similarly sized facultative carnivores in the past. Wolves are indeed the first animals we ever domesticated. Dangerous beasts who nonetheless hunted and lived alongside us and got more and more used to following orders and eating whatever scraps we have left over. Modern dogs are proof that under the right circumstances, domestication of carnivores is not only possible, it can be an award-winning success. But successfully kickstarting civilization usually requires both domesticated animals and a caloric surplus, or enough food to not only meet immediate needs, but provides a nutritional excess so that people can start focusing on more specialized tasks. That means permanent farms, which one must defend and maintain, a perilous operation for the people of Predator World. How could humans protect large swaths of land from constant animal attacks? Well, they might not have to. It's time we finally face the fact that while Hollywood teaches us that predators are heat-seeking missiles, torpedoes hurtling towards the nearest prey species, the reality is most predators aren't nearly as single-minded as the dinosaurs of Jurassic Park suggest. Catching prey is a calorically costly endeavor that often involves bodily risk. Species only attempt it if they're very confident they're about to get a worthwhile meal. You can see this in our blob simulation. Big blobs only chase down little blobs when absolutely necessary. Predators won't waste energy on a hunt if there's any reason to be apprehensive. It's why sharks and wolves rarely attack humans. We're freaky and stinky and unpredictable. This is a truth we've kind of danced around all video, but it's a critical one. Even if you gave chickens a predation instinct, it's unlikely they would actually see humans as food. They might nip at us because they're jerks, which they already do. On the whole, carnivorous chickens wouldn't be that different from regular chickens, and are another animal that Predator World humans could likely domesticate. Like, if chickens had to snack on the occasional mouse, I'm sure we could handle that, seeing how they already eat various insects. But back to the point, even if defending significant territory, humans in this timeline are unlikely to be overwhelmingly menaced by wild beasts because, make it clear, you're not an easy meal, and generally, most predators won't bother. So it seems like humans might be able to maintain the farmland and domesticate the animals required to reach the top of the all-predator reality. After all, but there's one other more disturbing possibility for this world's apex hunter. A species adapted specifically to hunt humans. Because here's the thing, for early hominids, animal attacks were part of life. Big cats, hyenas, wild dogs, crocodiles, all occasionally snacked on our ancestors according to the fossil record. Yet for the most part, these animals were not human hunting specialists.
Hominids made a much slower progress, giving more and more opportunity for carnivores to adapt to our behaviors, until eventually a species emerges that knows our every weakness and hunts us with ease. What exactly a predator adapted for hunting humans would look like could frankly be its own video, but it's a downright chilling concept. Admittedly, not the most likely one, as large specialist predators are somewhat uncommon, but they do happen. Polar bears are a seal's worst nightmare, as the bulk of these bears' diets and therefore the bulk of their adaptations is specialized to take out our flippered friends. And another side note, they're also one of the few species that explicitly sees humans as food, though they aren't specially adapted to hunt us. But if humans had an equivalent specialist predator, our progress might be greatly stalled, which means, hey man, you've been talking about humans for a while. Is this rabbit hole almost finished? It's finished when I permitted to finish, because there's one last elephant in the room here. Not an actual elephant, but a figurative elephant. Because
The weighty mammal, but the equally weighty possibility that in this all-predator timeline, Homo sapiens would have fundamentally different defensive capabilities. Assuming our primate ancestors ever emerged in this reality in the first place, they would have done so in the midst of increased predation pressures, and might therefore have invested in biological protections that would make them more difficult to prey upon. We are admittedly pretty far out on a hypothetical limb here, but pushing past uncertainties is what this video is all about. Because, brief rant, there are plenty of other potential issues with predator reality we've had to gloss over. For instance, even if the majority of predators were also eating plants, there's probably not still enough energy to go around without modifying vegetation itself. It's also true that trying to be a top herbivore and a top carnivore at the same time tends to be inefficient, which is why most species find success in emphasizing one or the other. So even if someone was crazy enough to create predator world through means of genetic engineering, give it a few tens of millions of years, there's a chance natural selection would just sort species back out into mostly herbivores and carnivores, unless you keep your thumb on the scale. But the point of a thought experiment is to experiment, not to hit a dead end and just give up. Okay, back to primates. What outlandish defenses might they have in this alternate reality? Well, assuming they're still starting in the trees, any deterrence like spines or armor plating might be too heavy, but some semi-arboreal species like the pangolin can still climb despite their armored fashion sense, so physical defenses are indeed a possibility. Yet the greatest potential defense for primates is one they already have: cooperation. That's right, the power of group projects, everyone's favorite. Seriously though, in nature, there are few things more valuable than a species capable of effective coordination, and that would hold true in predator reality. Indeed, chances are this trait would likely be even more critical, which brings us to our final essential point for simulating this all-predator biosphere: determining how species would work together. Evolutionarily, cooperation is an inherent idea, with various simulations demonstrating that it can emerge spontaneously on both a cellular and intraspecies level. Smaller units working together to act as one big one is how all multicellular life functions, and over again, said life forms have similarly learned to cooperate with others of their own kind. Long story short, teamwork makes the dream work. But in a world of all predators, teamwork might look fundamentally different, and that's because a pack of predators in a herd of prey do not function the same way. Packs versus herds. Let me explain. Herds of grazers tend to be disorganized, like they group together because there's safety in numbers, but they seldom put those numbers to use in terms of planning or coordination. They're more a crowd at the same concert than a tight-knit unit. Indeed, far from the altruistic eusociality of insects, most herbivorous mammals are kind of selfish, as oftentimes the individuals that got to reproduce and therefore pass on their genes were the ones that ditched their buddies the fastest when predators descended, leading to entire species made entirely of the type of unreliable jerks who will leave you in the dust when you need them the most.
In contrast, packs of hunters, surprisingly, tend to be much more cooperative. They need to be in lockstep, divide up their labor, and plan ambushes in advance if they're going to catch their prey with minimal injuries. So in a world where all animals have a mandatory predation quota, even those who get much of their nutrients from plants, the line between packs and herds might have to blur, and effective coordination could become far more common. We can see examples of the advantages a tight-knit herd might look like in nature. Herds of buffalo have a pre-planned military-style formation they'll fall into to protect their young. Elephants are also known to group up effectively and will even engage in more active predator deterrence. The final and most relevant example of herd solidarity, however, is in troops of primates. Gorillas, with their careful coordination and social hierarchies, are a preeminent example of highly cooperative herbivores. Likewise, chimps are equally a preeminent and rather terrifying example of cooperative pack hunters. Battles between primates are referred to as wars, and for good reason. When two highly organized groups come to blows, the conflict tends to be very intense indeed. So in predator reality, if most species are coordinating, ecosystems might be even more competitive than initially thought, on a level typically only associated with the world of insects. Solitary hunters like tigers might need to get over their introversion. All told, an ecosystem of predators stretches the very bounds of nature and might inspire clashes that are difficult to fathom. Yet, and I hope I've made this clear throughout this video, such a reality would far be more complex than simply a staging ground for eternal violence. Even in a world of increased conflict, predators would still exercise caution and fill a variety of niches beyond apex warmongers, and cooperation would still be encouraged, maybe even more so than in our reality. And while humans ascending to the top of this reality remains an unknown, there is a chance, and either way, predator world would assuredly give rise to fascinating, if terrifying, ecosystems. Ultimately, a kingdom of predators would never be just a kingdom of monsters. To quote one Dr. Henry Wu, "Monster is a relative term. To a canary, a cat is a monster. We're just used to being the cat." So while trying to determine if humans could survive in a world of all predators, I started to wonder, what animal species could the average person beat in a fight? Because though I usually try to end these videos with a meaningful question, sometimes all I want to think about is what would happen if a person bare-knuckle boxed a tiger. Trying to figure out how high humans could climb in an animal battle royale was an unexpectedly wild trip,